Hey everyone, welcome back to Cartel Files. My name is Adrian, and my job is to simplify laser design for you so you can make your next design quicker. Let's jump straight into it. As you can see, we've got the Design Chooser 9000 up on screen, and this is basically just a list of random ideas that I've come up with. If you'd like me to add some of your ideas into this list, please comment below. And while you're there, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. It really helps us to keep creating new content for you. And here we go. Let's click and see what we are designing today. Oh, okay. We're on a bit of a religious theme. I don't know why we keep getting some religious topics or categories, but here we go. We got religious milestone cake topper. Let's have a look at Google Images for some inspiration. Let's maybe do religion cake topper. See what results we get. All right, so I see there's a lot of crosses. Actually, most of this is all crosses. So sort of the Catholic style cake toppers, which is okay. I was hoping for a bit more of diversity here, but let's see what we can make. I don't really want to make just a cross like this because that's pretty simple. Maybe we can make a cross and a couple other designs because this would literally take me 2 seconds to make. I like this design, the first option. This is kind of cool with the dove. I think I saw something else. Where did I see that? Yeah, that's another one. Oh yeah, here. This was kind of cool, where the dove connects the cross, the two pieces of the cross. I think that would be kind of cool. There's a lot of lettering options. So I think what's best is I'll have a quick look through here, come up with some of the best designs that I can find. We'll use them as inspiration, and then we can start designing our own version. All right, give me a sec and I'll find something that we can work on. Okay, so I've finished Googling and I found these 4 images as inspiration, and we're going to try and recreate them, but you know, put our own little twist on them. So I think what we'll probably do is let's start with the easiest first, and I believe it's going to be this one here. We'll start there so I can explain all the fundamentals, and then we can go a little bit quicker when we get to the more complex designs. So in essence, what this is if we break it all down, we've got a circle here, we've got 2 rectangles, and then we've got the spike that comes off down the bottom, and we've got this little extra piece at the bottom here to sort of outline the bottom of the cross. So I think we can just freehand this. We'll use this as a reference because I don't like to just plainly copy. Let's see how we go. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the rectangle tool and pull out a rectangle. Now the cross, just by observation, you can see that it is typically longer than it is wide. So I'm going to sort of start plugging in some numbers for the width and the height of those 2 rectangles that will intersect. And we may just need to play around with the sizing to make it look right. So starting off with this rectangle, it's currently set to 16 by 125. I probably want to make that 15 mil just as a round number, and a little bit longer. I think maybe 135 looks better. Let's try 150. That maybe it looks a bit too long. So let's go maybe 140. I think that looks fine. We then need to create another rectangle that's going to be sort of across, that's going to intersect horizontally through there. And now I want to make sure that the height of the rectangle matches the width of the vertical rectangle. So the previous one that we made, which was 15 millimeters. And the length doesn't look too bad. Yeah, I think maybe we change that to about 90 millimeters. And I think that looks in proportion. It looks good to me. So now the next thing we want to do is work out where on this cross the horizontal portion is going to be situated. And I kind of like this, in this sort of area, this rough position. But I want to make this a round number so everything looks in proportion and correct. The easiest way to do that is if you go over here, there's an option here called the parallel dimension tool. You can pull that out. Okay, and if you click and hold that, I always use this horizontal and vertical dimension tool for something like this. And what I want to do is measure the distance from this top portion here down to, well, basically anywhere along that line. And it's going to tell me the distance between that top portion and the top portion of this this cross section is 37.88 millimeters. All right, so what I want to do is I want to move that, I think, down to 40 millimeters. I think that would look in proportion and correct. So what I can do is if we head up to here, this nudge distance option, you're going to make sure that you have nothing selected and change this nudge distance. So as you can see down here, the distance between the top and this line here is 37.88. We want it to be 40. So what we can do in that nudge distance, we can type in 40 minus 37.88, hit enter, and now it's automatically worked out what that distance is, 2.12 millimeters. And now if I select that box and press down, the arrow key on my keyboard, you can see it's now nudged at 2.12 millimeters, and now it's exactly 40 millimeters from the top, which I think looks good. The next thing is we don't know where exactly center is. So what we're going to do is, in my previous video, I spoke about this, but we can use the E and the C, which will move our objects in relation to each other, either horizontally or vertically. Okay, and what I want to do is choose the box, so the horizontal box, and then the vertical box, which means the horizontal will be moved relative to the vertical. And then I want to press C, and that'll push that box over so that now the center points are in line with each other horizontally. So now we know that it's exactly 40 millimeters from the top and it's horizontally aligned. Okay, we can remove this measurement and come over here, grab our virtual segment delete tool and remove all of these lines that we don't need anymore. And there we go, we've created a cross. Very simple, right? So now if we go back to our reference photo, you can see it has a circle. Let me just get out of the way there. You can see that we've got a circle that sort of sits behind the cross, and the bottom portion is extended. So let's start off with the circle. I'll create a circle from the center point of my cross here. You can see that it allows me to snap to that. If for whatever reason you're not able to snap to, the nodes, the center point, or the edge of the page, you can come up here. There's an option called Snap To. You see that? And then I normally have Page and Objects turned on. And sometimes I would turn the rest of these options on depending on what I'm designing. Guidelines is usually a good one to have on all the time as well. But I typically don't really use guidelines that often. So normally it's not turned on, but it's good to have. So now what I can do is I can click the center point and start pulling out a circle. And you can see if you don't click anything else on the keyboard, it will create a circle from that point. But that's not really what we want to do. We want the center of the circle to be in the center of the cross. So if you hold down Shift while pulling out, you can create a circle that whose origin or the center point is in the center of that cross. But you can see you can also create a circle that's not a perfect circle by doing this. If you then click Control, now it snaps into place, and it creates a circle that has the exact same dimensions vertically as horizontally. So I want to create a circle that's sort of, roughly that big, I guess. We can come in and make this a nice round number, so 110 by 110 millimeters. And I think that looks good. Now I want to deviate a little bit from this reference photo, just so it's not a complete copy. And what I want to do is have the circle be just a thin outline instead of a solid back, like you see in this image here. So easiest thing to do is we click on that circle again, Control C, Control V, and while making sure that we have this ratio locked, I want to change the size of the circle, this scale factor, to maybe, let's say, 80%. No, that's too much. Maybe to 90%. We could even go a little bit more, maybe 95 instead of 90. No, that's too thin. Maybe 92.5. There you go. That looks good. All right, so now we will have this outside circle, not a solid circle, and then the inside will be the cross. So let's delete these lines here. Okay. And now we have one solid piece. So the last thing I want to do is add this spike at the bottom. Okay, and basically what that's going to be is another rectangle that's not the full width of the cross. Okay, so we can start out and make it maybe 100 millimeters tall. And I always like to make it a bit, at least the thickness of the material, or a little bit larger in width. So if the thickness of the material, typically we're cutting this out of maybe 3 millimeter acrylic. So I want at least 3 millimeters in width, just so that it's strong enough to support its own weight. You wouldn't want anything thinner than that. So I think maybe 5 millimeters in width is good. And the last thing we want to do is snap this, the center of the spike that will go down into the cake to the center of the cross, or the base of the cross, I should say. So there will be an option here. If I zoom in, you can click on this midpoint, okay? And we want to snap it. You see how it automatically snaps to the midpoint here? We want to snap it there. Let's do that one more time. Choose the midpoint and come close to where the midpoint would be on the cross, and it'll snap in place there. Okay, so now that is that's sorted. We'll use the virtual segment delete tool to remove that line there, and now we've got a design ready to go. We can cut that out of mirrored acrylic or something like that, and we're all good. So that's design number 1 done. That was pretty quick. The other thing I would do is, just while we're still talking about the first design, is if I select everything, you can see in our objects panel on the right hand side here that each of these sections is a separate curve. Okay, we have two different ways we can do this. We can either group this so they all stay separate, but they're grouped together under one object, which we can ungroup later if we needed to edit something. Or we have an option up here while everything is selected. We can click this button here, combine. And when you combine that, you can now see you have one complete curve. Okay, and as long as everything is touching and connected, this is now one complete curve. And if we wanted to edit this later, we'll have to break it. We would have to actually physically delete sections out of it. But I'm happy with the design, so I'm happy to combine that. If I was wanting to change it later or make edits to it later, I would just group that. All right, so design 1 is done. Let's move it out of the way and we can put it next to the reference photo. Let's have a look at design number 2. So design number 2 is going to work, it's going to use the basics that we just learned. Okay, but we're going to now do it with text. So yeah, look, you can spend your time and find a nice font that will work really well. I'm a bit of a sucker for Embassy, the font. I really like it. So let's type in baptism, and to pull up the text elements, there's a tool right here, the text tool. The shortcut is F8, but you can click on that and then click anywhere on your screen. It'll drop your text tool and you can start typing. So as you can tell, okay, this text here is a little bit different to this, mainly because it's not linking, right? It's not a cursive font. So let's change that. As I said, I really like the Embassy font. So if you come up to the top here, you can choose all your fonts. I will normally scroll down to Embassy, this one here. Okay, and you can see that's what the design looks like once you've changed the font style. All right, so we've changed the font. It's now cursive, looks good to me. But you can see the B here does not touch the A, and this is currently a text object. We need to change it to a curve in order for us to keep working with it. All right, so let's right-hand click on it, and we can click this button here, convert to curves. And as I said, that'll change it from a text object into a curve. Once you've done that, it's non-editable. Okay, so if you want to keep it editable and play around with maybe different fonts and stuff like that, you need to keep it as a text object. Once you're ready to actually, proceed and make and continue on with your design, convert it to a curve, and then we can continue. So now that it's a curve, I normally always remove the fill and create a outline. And this is where we're going to see our first issue. So most fonts, each letter is its own individual, object. And the font doesn't really care, because normally each letter is its own color. And where the two lines join, or where the two letters join for a cursive text, typically you don't see this. But when we convert it to a curve, you can see all these letters have an overlap section. And if we cut it just as it is, all the letters would fall apart because they're not joined. There's individual points at which each of the letters start and stop. So we need to go through here, and we could do a few things. I'll show you a couple of different options. Me personally, I love the virtual segment delete tool. I'll go in there, delete all those lines, super quickly. But there are other options. So I like to show you a couple different options. So first one, as I said, virtual segment delete tool. If I zoom in there, oops, sorry about that. If I zoom in here, we can just delete those lines, and now those two sections are connected. But the downside to the virtual segment delete tool is if we break this curve apart. So if I right hand click and press break curve apart, now you can see that the M is no longer connected to the rest of the letters, right? The two curves meet at a point, right? But they're not physically connected. So if I wanted to connect them, I would use the weld tool. And I'll show you how that works on the I and the S. So if I click on the letter I and then click on the letter S, I have an option up here. Remember we used the combine tool previously? Well, this time we will use the weld tool. Okay, so when I click the weld tool, have a look at this little section between the I and the S. What happens? When I click weld, you can see it's now removed a section there and welded those two portions together. Okay, but it's still leaving a line there that we need to remove later. Okay, but the benefit is now once I've clicked the letter S and I try and move that, you can see these two are physically welded together, right? So it's now combined, I guess, those two curves. So we can go along and do the rest. Normally, the way my workflow is, or the way that I like to work, is I will use the virtual segment delete tool. I'll remove all these lines because it's super quick. Okay, here we go. Delete all those lines. And then I'll come back in and I'll choose the letter A, hold down Shift, choose the letter P, T, I, S is already coming along with the right because it's welded, and then click the M, and now I click weld. And so now that's given me a perfect, continuous letter, or continuous word, I should say, and all the letters are fully joined together. So you can see if I try and move one of the letters, the rest of them come with it. Cool. Now we probably just need to fix the letter I here. So a lot of people do this differently. You can see in our reference photo, they've got a little bit of a link here. So it's just basically a rectangle that will link these two, something like that. But I personally don't like that. I think it looks out of place, doesn't look right. So I would just probably make the circle a little bit larger and make sure that that overlaps. Delete those lines and weld that to the rest of the design. There you go. And lastly, we need to move the B over for it to overlap the A. Let's do that. Okay, and we can delete those two lines in between, and then everything can be welded together. All right, so that and that, we will weld it. Perfect. So now it's a matter of just resizing it. Okay, so I use the page size, the Corel page, sort of as a guide. You know, what you see here is an A4 sheet of paper. I would probably make it, sort of 80 to 90%, 80 to 90% the width of that page. So let's do that. And then the last thing is we want to create that spike that will go down into the cake itself. So in this example here, he's got it coming off the T. So we can copy that. All right. And we can see where the bottom of the P is roughly here. Okay, so I want to take note of what the height of that box is, so that we can make the box exceed, let's say, 100 millimeters past the bottom of that P. So at the moment it's roughly 20 millimeters, so I want at least 120 millimeter long spike. something like that. And then that allows, you know, maybe 50 or 60 mil of the spike to go into the cake, and then it leaves enough room so that the bottom of the P doesn't touch the top of the cake. All right, we can just visually line that up, remove all the lines that we don't need. Okay, and then we can weld this spike into the rest of the design, just like that. And now we have one complete design, okay, that can be resized to whatever size we want, and it's all linked together nicely. Perfect. Now you can see in this reference photo they have a rounded edge at the bottom. I don't know if that's truly necessary. I mean, cake is pretty soft, so you can push a square edge in there. It's just more work, but you know, if you wanted to do something like that, I would just get a circle, pull that circle, or put that circle within the constraints of the spike, okay, and make sure that it's touching both edges. Pull that down to the bottom, something like that. Delete all the lines we don't need, and now we've got a rounded bottom. Super easy, right? Always make sure that you are welding these together, because when you resize, you want it all to be one continuous design. All right, design number 2 is finished. Let's try number 3. So on this one, you know, what I wanted to showcase is this sort of, you know, two layer system where you have the text on the front in a, you know, in white in this example, and then a sort of a bubble background following the shape of the text behind it. All right, I'll disregard the name on top. It's the same sort of process, so there's no point showing that. But yeah, you could have the baptism section as your default, and then you can add the name later on a sort of ad hoc basis. So let's try that out. I'm going to use I'm going to use a different font this time. Baptism. I don't like the default, you know, sort of Arial font. So let's go in here, find something a little bit nicer. I'm thinking maybe something like this. I like this. All right, so as you can see, there's going to be a text portion and then an outline portion. So the text is pretty simple. Use your text tool, place it on the page, right hand click the text, convert it to curves like we did before. And now that it's a curve, we can give it a red outline and remove the fill. Okay, so remember this portion of the design will have to be cut out of a different colored material. So just keep that in mind when designing this. And then what we want to do is select this curve, or select these letters, press Ctrl F9, and that brings up the contour panel here on the right hand side. If you don't have that option, you can go up to Effects, over here, up to Effects, and then click on Contour, and that will bring up this contour palette. Now that we've selected all the text, we want an offset of maybe 5 millimeters. Okay, so I'm typing that in here, offset. We want an outside contour, right? So we want this bubble-like effect to be on the outside of our text. And we want it to have rounded corners. So you can see in this example here, we have like all rounded corners. There's no sharp edges. All right, let's see what that looks like. I'll hit apply. And you can see now it's made a nice bubble effect on the outside. And I think that looks pretty good for our first go. You can play around with the offset. If you want slightly smaller offset, it'll follow the letters a bit more, but you may get sections here where you need to remove this contour that it's created. I think I kind of like that. That looks all right. So the next step is we need to break apart our curve and our contour. If we head over to the objects panel, you can see over that the curve, the contour is part of this curve, right? And we want to remove that. So right hand click on the curve, or the outline contour, I should say, and then we click break contour apart. You see that option? Now the contour and the curve, or the text inside text curve is two separate objects, which is good. Now let's quickly go in and delete these lines that we don't need. All right. So now let's put in the spike. So again, I want maybe a 4mm spike, 100mm long. Okay, and probably want to make this a little bit larger as well. Something like that. There's my spike. Have it sort of in line with the T. We can snap it here to the midpoint, bring it down, use my virtual segment delete tool to remove that. And there we go. We want to weld those together. And there we go. Good. So to have, I guess, an idea of what this would look like, I can fill using this Smart Fill tool. Fill this background. And you can see that's what it would look like if I cut those two sections out of different materials and stuck the letters on. That's the sort of design we're going for there. All right. So let's remove that fill. That's design number 3 done. And our last design will be something like this. And this is kind of cool. I'm really liking this design. So what I've done is, if we head over to Pixabay, I found this Dove file. Okay, we can download it as a PNG. If you wanted to download the vector graphic, you actually have to be a member. But I'll show you a technique where we can turn a image file like this into a vector. So hit download, or we could just copy the image and paste it here. But if we were to start with a vector image, it would be even better. So next step is, now that we've got our image in here, while having the image selected, we want to go up to Trace Bitmap, come down and click Detailed Logo. Okay, that opens a new panel. And I think it's already done a pretty good job at creating the outline of the dove that we're going to use. It's removed all that black background, and it's given me this nice white image to work with. So hit OK. Let's give it an outline of red and remove the fill. And you can see this is the design. So as I said before, I'm deviating a little bit from this design because I don't want to just rip it off and copy them directly. But same sort of deal. Let's make this bird a little bit smaller. Okay, maybe we should use the page as a guide on sort of the sizing of this object. And then you can see we've got the dove sort of flying to the left, and I think that actually looks better than flying to the right. So we'll copy that. If you select your image, come up here, you can choose the flip horizontal or mirror horizontal tool. Now it's flying to the left, which I like better. And then simply create a across like we did before. This is much thinner than our previous cross. So let's maybe make that 7 millimeters wide and 220 millimeters tall. Okay, and then we want to make the cross section of this. And typically this should be shorter, so maybe 150 millimeters instead of 200. I'll select this horizontal bar and then click, while holding shift, click on the vertical bar and then press C to align them horizontally. And I think I'm just going to eyeball this. I think something in that neighborhood looks good in terms of vertical alignment. Let's grab our dove, put it in place here, roughly where we want it. I think maybe something like this, where the head is overlapping this bar a little bit, crossbar. I don't know what the right word is. Is it a crossbar? Not sure. Now let's just delete all the lines that we don't need. So I kind of want, you know, the dove and the cross to sort of blend together, if that makes sense. So we want to remove all these lines here. Oops, that's fine there. And I would like this section to match up here. See how it falls a little bit short? I think that might look a little bit weird. So if I double click on that line, I can choose these last few nodes and then I can move them so that they fall within the cross. Let's delete all of that and delete this. And now you can see sort of what we're looking at. The head needs to be removed too. And I think that's what we are going to be left with. We need to delete this section here as well. There you go. So if we now use the Smart Fill tool to just sort of visualize what it's going to look like, that's the sort of effect we're going for. All right, and I think that looks fine. The last thing we want to do is just put a little spike at the base here, or maybe because it's such a tall cross, we can just make like a triangle section at the base, and that could just go into the cake itself. So I'll use the 2-point line tool. I will come up to the center point or the midpoint and just choose a random angle, you know, and create a line that way. I can duplicate that, mirror it, and then position that on the midpoint as well. And obviously, because it's the midpoint, the two lines will meet at the bottom and they will also intersect the edge of the cross. And we can just remove those two pieces there, giving us a nice pointed edge to go into the cake. Select everything and weld it together. So now it's one complete curve. And then obviously if we want to resize it, it will all resize nicely. So that is 4 designs in one video. I hope that showed quite a few different techniques that you can then use for your own designs. If you want any of these files, they'll be available on cartelfiles.com. You can go ahead and download them, use them for your own business, or cut them out for friends, family, or your own children. And there's no restrictions on commercial use or anything like that. So go ahead and download them there. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please hit subscribe. If there's anything that you'd like to see differently, or if you have any other interesting ideas for upcoming videos, please leave a comment down below. All of that really helps out the channel, allows us to grow and keep making free content for you. Thank you.